kick in now.
Les, just put on your video.
Can everyone, and we're up and running. Well, welcome everyone tonight to this council meeting. In light of the current coronavirus situation, this meeting is being presented in a different way, virtually via live stream. The Victorian Government's COVID-19 Omnibus Emergency Measures Act 2020 has introduced new mechanisms that allow for virtual council meetings to be held between the 1st of May 2020 and the 2nd of November 2020. This ensures that local government decision making can continue during the coronavirus pandemic. The public are encouraged to watch virtual meetings through live streaming, which is available on Council's website and YouTube page. As chair of the meeting, I give my consent for this open council online in accordance with Council's governance rules. The stream will stop at the conclusion of the meeting. Should technical issues prevent the continuation of the stream, every effort will be made to bring the stream back online as soon as possible. A recording will be made available on Council's website following the meeting. I will now run through the procedures to ensure the meeting runs as smoothly as possible. In accordance with requirement 1 of the Minister's Good Practice Guideline, I will address each councillor individually to confirm the following: that they can hear the proceedings, see one another's other councillors, and that they can be heard when speaking. If a councillor is unable to confirm that they can hear or see the proceedings, or if they cannot be seen or heard, they will be recorded as absent in the minutes and be ineligible to vote on agenda items. I will now confirm that all councillors can be seen and heard. Deputy Mayor Councillor Joanne Gilbert, can you please confirm that I can be seen and heard? And if you can confirm that you can hear and see other councillors.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I can hear you and see and hear everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gilbert. Councillor David Evans, can you please confirm that you can see and hear other councillors?
Yes, I can see and hear everybody. Thank you.
And so, David, I can't see you. I'm not. Oh, there you go. You can hear us anyhow, David.
My video.
We can hear you quite clearly, Councillor Evans. Thanks. Councillor Nathan Hansford, can you please confirm that you can see and hear other councillors?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I will confirm that.
Councillor Helena Kirby, can you please confirm that you can see and hear other councillors?
Yes, I confirm I can see and hear all the other councillors.
Councillor Des Phelan?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I can see other councillors and I can hear you clearly.
Thank you very much. Councillor Les Rowe?
I can hear you and I can hear other councillors quite clearly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If any councillor drops out during the meeting, they will be recorded as having left the meeting at that time, and the meeting will continue as per normal. If a councillor rejoins the meeting, in accordance with requirement 1 of the Minister's Good Practice Guideline, I will again ask the councillor to confirm that they can see and hear the proceedings. Upon this confirmation, it will be recorded in the minutes that the councillor has rejoined the meeting. Councillors, if you would like to move or second a motion, please raise your hand in a manner that can be seen clearly on your computer's camera. Councillors, when voting on a matter, please also raise your hand either for or against the motion in a manner that can be clearly seen on your computer's camera. Please leave your hand raised until I've declared a motion as being carried or lost. If you wish to speak to an item during debate, please also raise your hand in a manner that I can clearly see, and leave your hand there until I have asked you to speak. This will allow me as the Mayor to manage the debate accordingly. When you are not speaking, please ensure that you are on mute. Due to coronavirus situation and the meeting being held virtually, any public questions submitted will be read out by the CEO as proxy where appropriate. Again, due to coronavirus situation, any public presentations and submissions received in accordance with Council's governance rules will be read out as myself as the Mayor. after the introduction of the relevant report. The maximum of time still applies, 5 minutes. Thank you very much. I'll now recite the opening declaration on behalf of councillors. We, the councillors of Golden Plains Shire, declare that we will undertake on every occasion to carry out our duties in the best interest of the community, and that our conduct shall maintain the standards of the Code of Good Governance, so that we may faithfully represent and uphold the trust placed in this council by the people of Golden Plains Shire. Council also acknowledges the traditional Wadawurrung owners of the land where we are all meeting today. Council pays its respect to the Wadawurrung elders, both past and present, and extends that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are part of the Golden Plains Shire. Councillors, are there any apologies or leaves of absence? I assume there's not been the last meeting. Councillors, we have a resolution before us to confirm the minutes of the ordinary meeting, and I think in the agenda it is incorrect there at the 25th of August, but we did have the special meeting afterwards. So can I please have someone confirm the minutes of the last meeting, which was held on the 8th of September 2020, as circulated? Move Councillor Rowe, seconded Councillor Phelan. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Tonight we have received 9 questions from 5 local residents in relation to the Invalid structure plan. As these questions relate to a decision of council yet to be made on the matter that is on the agenda tonight, a response to the questions will be provided in writing. Following council's determination, a copy of the questions have been circulated to the councillors. Another question was received from 1 other local resident, which will now be read out and answered by the CEO. Mr. CEO, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A question was received by Anne Belitho. It's a governance issue. Her question starts out with a bit of background. So in view of one of the clauses of our recently adopted governance rules and public transparency policy, as mandated by the local government authority reforms, and particularly the words, councillors must avoid all situations which may give rise to conflicts of interest, and given Amendment C87's growth forecasts of significant availability of new land and property for sale in the Invalid and the lifespan of that plan, the question then is, will the changed policy potentially give rise to conflicts of interest for any councillor who are property developers or estate agents who may benefit from the adoption of Amendment C87 in future years? The response is, the Local Government Act provides the provisions for conflict of interest. It is the individual responsibility of each councillor and officer to identify and disclose any conflicts of interest they have. Our councillors and officers take this responsibility seriously and undergo training to assist them in recognizing and declaring conflicts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. We now move on to consider the formal agenda. Item 7.1, Assembly of Councillors. I'll take that as read. Does someone want to move that? Moved Councillor Hansford, seconded Councillor Kirby. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 7.2, Delegates Report from the 25th of August 2020 to the 20th of September 2020. Councillors, would anyone like to speak to the Delegates Report? Councillor Evans, followed by Councillor Kirby. Thank you, Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, the important thing for me is the Rural and Peri-urban Advisory Committee virtual meeting. Now, with that actual committee that I've been on for the last 2 years, the situation is I've got on that for the trying to get a solution up for the sale yard problem in Geelong, which is still ongoing. The situation is that I am a part of the subcommittee on that as well, and I have indicated to the advisory committee that although I'm not standing for council in this election, that I'm quite happy to remain in that role until we get an outcome of something in the future regarding that. Now, I consider this to be very important because essentially the peri-urban farmers in particularly southern area of Golden Plains, who once were using the original sale yards, now have to find other sources. Now, in the survey that we recently put out there, 25% of the respondents came from Golden Plains. So there is a desire in our area for a resolution of some form to be able to come out of this, and hopefully I can assist in that, and I'll be doing it as a private individual, and I won't have any council role in that. I won't be referring to Golden Plains in any way, shape or form, other than being a supportive member of the community for that section of our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'd just like to say that I joined in on the Zoom meeting for the World Heritage listing. It was a very formative meeting regarding all the townships from Bendigo through to Ballarat, the Grampians, and includes Golden Plains, along with I think about 11 or 15 other councils in that region. It is going to be a long process. It's going to take 5 years for this to hopefully get it up off the ground. And I'm just very proud that as a council, we were part of making this happen in our region. So I think the next step forward is our economic development team to be on board and really try and get some heritage happening within our Shire, because this is what it's all about, is the heritage of the goldfields in Golden Plains Shire. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kirby. Councillor Hansford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll just follow on that one from Helena, that it's the tourism opportunity that comes with the goldfields. It's just incredible. It's, in many other countries in the world, it's really taken off, and it'll be good to see around our area. So thanks for that, Councillor Kirby. Didn't have a library meeting in the last month. They're only bi-monthly. And we had an MAV rep forum. So this was a virtual meeting that we had instead of what would normally be a state council meeting. There was 107 councillors on the virtual meeting, and very informative, although very different to what we would normally have as a state council. So hopefully by our next state council, or the next state council, sorry, which will be in May, hopefully be back to normal, where motions and that can be heard instead of just really being an information session. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hansford. Would any other councillor like to speak to the delegates' report? I'll just probably echo both Councillor Kirby and Councillor Hansford. I attended both of those. Probably they are best meetings. The month World Heritage bid is massive, and it's something that has probably not been seen with the collective of that many councils coming together, supporting one another. So that is the seeds of something very special there, with both Honourable Steve Brax and Dennis Natholm were in attendance there, which was good. And although in both those forums, seen huge numbers of people being able to attend, and probably Councillor Kirby and probably myself, it was quite easy just to tap in and watch that. But I think the MOV one, as Councillor Hansford said there, it's yeah, I think a lot of us are getting zoomed out, and you really do need to start meeting people in person, especially at meetings such as that. Thank you. And can I have someone move the acceptance of the delegates report? Moved Councillor Evans, seconded Councillor Kirby. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 7.3, P20 to 076 1805 Rokewood Shelford Road. Director Josipovic. To introduce that report when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report relates to a planning permit application for the use and development of the land for a service station, access to a road zone category 1 and signage at 1805 Rokewood Shelford Road in Rokewood. The application has been referred to a council meeting for determination because there were 2 objections to the application. This report provides a background to the application and a summary of the relevant planning considerations. And I just want to point out, councillors have been provided with a full copy of the application, objections and submissions of support for consideration prior to making a decision. One of the concerns raised by objectors related to the plans and information submitted stating the land is used for a quarry. The application is for the use and development of a service station, and this is a refuelling facility only, so no other services that usually are associated with service stations, for example, a shop, food and drink facilities. On review of the application, Council made the permit applicant aware that the existing information submitted did refer to a quarry. No planning permits have been issued for a quarry on that site. The permit applicant's reply stated that it is acknowledged that a portion of the subject site may potentially be used as a quarry. The use for the land as a quarry does not form part of this application, and a planning permit would be required for extractive industry in addition to a works approval if one was proposed at a later date. Any quarry application would be placed on public notification. The recommendation is that Council resolves to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit for the use and development of the land for a service station, creation of access to a road zone category 1 and business identification sign, subject to the conditions attached to the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Josipovic. Well, I do have two public presentations to read out from 2 objectors. Number 1, Kelly and Adam Walton, and will be read out as received. Dear Councillors, as stated in our previous submission regarding planning application P20 to 076, we strongly object to this proposal. The development of a service station to fuel the needs of a quarry which has not been approved is clearly a commercial industrial project proposed in a rural farming zone. This is inappropriate and has prohibited other similar projects from being approved, surely setting a precedent for this one. Council has no ability to make exceptions to this without changing the zoning of the land. As mentioned in our submission, as direct neighbouring landholders, we will be negatively affected by this proposal and also by the flow-on impacts of what may come if this project is approved. Unacceptable noise, reduced visual amenity both day and night, increased traffic on an already dangerous crest of the road and also on Bells Road. With increased traffic comes increased danger to our family and staff who regularly use these roads to move livestock and farm machinery. The amenity of our property is extremely important to us. With such interest in recent proposed changes to motorbike use in the Shire and the concern regarding residents' noise impacts, we ask you to consider the cumulative impact on our amenity with approval for up to 228 wind turbines on 3 sides of our property, 1.2 kilometres from our homes. The plan for a quarry on the other side of our property, which when operating a few months ago was like listening to a jackhammer in our garden for hours on end. And now a service station which will increase the amount of heavy traffic, noise, from truck brakes, impacts to safety whilst conducting normal farming activities, and will affect the visual amenity of our rural landscape both during the day and the night. We request that you also read our original submission to the Council for a more thorough explanation of our concerns. Also, please note that we have had no contact from anyone within the Shire to discuss our concerns and see if anything could be altered to appease us in any way. We have been through the planning process for several permits as applicants and have had very detailed discussions with the Shire and also objectors. It would be very disappointing if this permit application process gave less attention to objectors concerned due to the current COVID-19 restrictions. COVID-19 will pass, but the service station in the wrong location will remain a long time. Proper procedure needs to be followed. This service station should not be approved. Thank you. Narelle Thompson, objector. Permit P20-076 should not be approved as per your own report. On page 20 states its purpose in farm zone is not agricultural but commercial land use in nature. Subsequently, it does not meet the relevant policy. The propose of the zone and the decision guidelines when considering adjoining and nearby land, no matter how small and modest the development is. In addition, any increase in localised truck movement on site will impact adjoining and nearby land uses, simply with increased risk through polluants and associated risks for critical incidents. Also, yes, there are a lot of trucks on our roads, but it's the use of air brakes that is really noisy. The slowing down and starting up again is so much noisier. With having it there, it will also increase more trucks and also create more chance of spills, which will then wash down into our waterways for our stock. Ends there. Councillors, I will put it to you now if there's any questions for an officer. Councillor Hansford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At our briefing day, I briefly brought about what a service station means and what it could be. You've touched on in one of those objections about there being no sale of food or items like that. It will just be fuel only. The question I have is, if in the future this refueling station would then become something more than just pumping fuel, is a further application need to be applied for, or is that part of this application but just not taken up at this point?
Director Josipovic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Depending on the level of change requested, it would have to be either an amendment or a brand new permit application. If it's a significant enough change for a brand new application, then that process will be followed. But in either scenario, if there's an amenity impact, council would advertise whether it's an amendment or a new application.
So just so that I'm absolutely clear in my own mind,
yeah.
The proposal says that it may include the selling of motorist vehicle accessories, selling of food and drinks, hiring of trailers, washing motor vehicles, and installing of motor vehicle accessories or parts. Now that is part of the application. So if this applicant in 12 months' time was to do any of those activities, would they or would they not need to apply for another permit?
So on page 14 of Council's agenda, that's the definition of a service station out of the Golden Plains planning scheme. The application is only asking for an unmanned fueling station without the selling of motor vehicles or the selling of food, drinks, and all those other bits. So the permit application is asking for an unmanned fueling station only. And that's why in the next sentence we talk about the application proposes the following features. The use has been described by the permit applicant as a service station and in brackets refueling facility. And I accept that that may lead to a little bit of confusion, but that's an extract from the planning scheme that just defines what a service station is. The application is asking for something less than what a full service station is.
Yeah, and that was my question. Would they need something further if they were to change that use?
Yes, they would.
You've answered that they would. So that's great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hansford. Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Evans, or followed by Councillor Kirby.
Just a clarification, if I could. Phil, in regard to consultation between the objectors and the applicant, I was a little bit confused with the wording of the objector's letter that the Mayor read. It seemed to me that they suggested that they didn't have that consultation, which is our normal process. Did that occur or did that not? Thank you.
So in accordance with the government guidelines during the COVID-19, we haven't been holding face-to-face mediation meetings, and in all our letters that we sent to the objectors acknowledging receipt of their objections, we state that quite explicitly, and we also let them know that as per usual council protocol, the matter will be coming before a council for a determination, given that objections have been received. So we haven't had any face-to-face mediation or consultations since that time, but as is normal practice, we would send a copy of the objections to the applicant, and then the applicant has the opportunity to either review or amend their application if they see fit.
But couldn't we have organised a Zoom meeting between the two, the three parties? Because, I mean, we've been in this for quite a while now. It could have been done, surely. Or was this in an era where we weren't up to speed on that?
Well, it's all new for us. There's no statutory requirement to do the mediation meetings, although I accept that it's an absolute practice and a good practice. So we will look, depending on how, when the restrictions first came in, no one knew how long it will be, and Zoom was new to a lot of us. So we took the view initially that we wouldn't do those in person to person, and then also it's reliant on people having access to technology. There's not always a guarantee that people have access to the technology to participate in Zoom meetings, and then how do you decide who participates, who doesn't? But we constantly review how we're doing this stuff, particularly as this pandemic goes longer and longer.
But this is probably a little bit off the topic. If this pandemic continues the way it is, and the next council is into Zooms and management as well, I think council should have a policy to actually address that in terms of these type of consultation meetings as another arm of transparency. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. And just on that, Councillor Evans, I think the last council meeting, I raised that issue with regards to the place of worship, and it does seem to be an area that needs a bit of attention if we're going to be going down this track a good bit. But there was a letter from council to the objector to notify them that was going to be part of the process. But I think going forward, I echo your sentiment. Councillors, any further questions? Sorry, Councillor Kirby. Yep, sorry.
Thank you. Mr. Josipovic, I'm just wondering, you were talking about light spill onto neighbouring properties, and it states that there would be one 20-foot pole with a 20-watt LED light. Now, I wouldn't have thought that would have been suitable lighting for a driveway. So is there any other lights that will be going ahead onto the property? as well as signage on the roadside.
Sorry, I'm trying to keep up. Yes, so the lighting is for the driveway only, and there's some sensor activated lighting at the refueling station itself. So if a vehicle pulls up at the refueling area, there'll be some lights that come on while they're refueling, so they're not on all the time. The 20 watt lighting has been assessed and referred to obviously Rural Roads Victoria, because they're the roads authority for the main road there, and has been accepted. Has been assessed as acceptable to designate the driveway.
I do have two more further questions, if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor. Just regarding the planting, the landscaping on the eastern side, I was just wondering if that would also help if there was planting on the south side, because there is a resident behind on the south side as well as the west side of the proposed service centre.
Yep.
And the second question, I might as well put them together. One of the concerns from one of the applicants states that have we been in contact with Vic Roads regarding their application to the road management plan? And also, have we also contacted the Corangamite catchment regarding the Mia Creek and the Murdy catchment as well? So I was just wondering if both of those things have been addressed for the applicants.
So the report does talk about the referral to Rural Roads Victoria. There was, as I understand it, there's no statutory requirement to refer it to the CCMA, given the distance from the creek. But it has been referred to Rural Roads Victoria most definitely, because it's a property adjoining and the access is to a road category zone 1, and therefore needed to be referred to Rural Roads Victoria. And there's some conditions in the draft set of conditions attached to the report that are directly from Rural Roads Victoria. And they are conditions, I'm just...
Must have missed that.
So it's listed conditions 17 through to 20, which are the Department of Transport. Now, Rural Roads Victoria, Vic Roads, all those entities have been wrapped up into a single department. So the conditions provided by Rural Roads Victoria effectively are conditions 17 through to 20.
Okay, it was just that I didn't see an extra laneway going into that property, and I thought that when you're travelling in a 100-kilometre zone, that would be imperative that we had another laneway. Thank you.
No problems.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask another question, please? This is in relationship to the safety of the area. Now, another councillor may be able to help me here. This being a operate, like the truck operator drives in, refuels with diesel, jumps back in his cabin. If anything happens, the nozzle comes out of the tank or whatever, and the spillage in the bund area. Now, the bund area, as defined, is the one where the truck rolls over the bunded edges and is within the bund area. Now, there is a potential for a large diesel spill there. What type of facilities do these plants have for, recognising that and, the appropriate people being informed and say, you've got a big pool of diesel, which, as we all know, give it a match and it will light up under the right circumstances. So, and I didn't see anything listed there, but if Vic Roads have cleared it, I have no problem with it. It's just that I'm a little bit uncertain about that. Thanks.
I'm not 100% certain, other than to say as you mentioned, Councillor Evans, it has been referred to Vic Roads, and they've put their conditions in. These are not uncommon facilities. They're quite common nowadays for unmanned service stations. And my understanding is that with the use of technology, etc., there are alarm systems in place for, you know, bigger than or larger than usual flows of fuel coming out of the pumps, etc. But I'm not 100% sure what those safety guarantees are. But there's some fairly significant controls over fuel stations and safety around them as well. So this application has been deemed to meet all those.
Thank you very much. Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Kirby?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Josefovich, could you just explain to us about the zone? Because it seemed in one of the applicants in their message just before that they were very concerned about the zone and what they can and can't do in a farming zone. And because they're not here in person, I just think that it needs to be said. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kirby. It is farming zone, and the proposed use is what's commonly referred to as a Section 2 use, so therefore it requires a permit. It's not an as of right use, which would be a Section 1 use. In other words, in a farming zone, any as of right uses are listed as a Section 1 use, therefore you don't need a planning permit. In this case, it's a Section 2, which you do, but it's not a prohibited use. So again, it's subject to the assessment and the decision guidelines that are set out in the planning scheme, which have been articulated in the report as part of the response and the summary of the assessment that the council officers undertook.
Councillors, I'll seek a motion, or Councillor Hansford moving the recommendation. Moving the motion as per the recommendation, Councillor Hansford. Seconding the motion, Councillor Evans. Councillor Hansford, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to say that this is an excellent piece of infrastructure for this area. As long as we have the things put in place that will stop an environmental hazard. The bowsers are fitted with knockoffs, so if the pump was to fall out of the tank and hit the ground, it will close off the flow of fuel. There are a number of those things in place normally. I think Regional Roads Victoria have addressed the entrance and exit with the diagrams we've been provided. So I think that this, in the long run, will be a really good asset for the area, and particularly with the building of the wind farm coming up very soon. It's a great thing to have. So happy to move the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hansford. Councillor Evans seconding the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I reflect that the other issue we have to also consider that the Shelford Road now is a very heavily trafficked road with heavy vehicles. Now, it's something that we are all concerned about with the condition of the road. Now, it's interesting that when we look at the Gerrinhap Road down there, that has been upgraded to a high level because of higher usage. Now, as a benefit from this, we may find that Vic Roads, because more trucks is probably likely to use it, they probably will upgrade that road to a higher level, which is definitely needed in the Shire. And with that, it's an asset. Will it go further into like a full-on service station. Well, we got safeguards there to ensure that shouldn't happen. And of course, it should be referred to other services in the area, maybe in Rokewood, whoever there is supplying fuels and whatever. So, but in terms of the concept and what it may improve, it may actually assist in the fuel delivery in the area for farmers for their diesel. If diesel is coming into this site here, it just may be that the farmers around that area may find a slightly lower diesel delivery cost because of the facility being there. So there are positives in the long term, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? With no councillor speaking against the motion, I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 7.4, the amendment C87 GPLA Invalid Structure Plan. Again, Director Josipovic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Amendment C87 replaces the Invalid Structure Plan review dated 2005 with the Invalid Structure Plan dated 2019 in the Golden Plains planning scheme. The report invites councillors to consider the recommendations from a planning panel report dated 28th of August 2020, prepared in relation to Amendment C87. A resolution is required before the amendment can be sent to the Minister for Planning for approval. Following the exhibition of the amendment, 92 submissions were received, and at the November 2019 Council meeting, it was resolved that Council request the Minister for Planning to appoint a panel to consider all submissions to the amendment C87 GPLA and make recommendations regarding the amendment. A panel hearing was held on the 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th and 20th of July 2020 by video conference. The panel considered all submissions to Amendment C87, and there were 21 parties to the panel hearing, including some 18 community members, groups, most of which presented to the panel in support of their submissions. The panel's report was provided to Council on the 28th of August 2020. The panel found that the Invalid Structure Plan has been prepared in an appropriate and robust manner, involving community engagement and informed by key background documents. It contains the key directions to manage the future growth of the town, and the panel made 8 recommendations. All of the proposed changes have been made to the documentation included as attachments to this report. The panel report was released publicly on the 17th of September 2020, immediately following the Council briefing held on the 16th of September. The Invalid Structure Plan is a high-level strategic plan which will guide the growth and development of the town moving forward. There are many future steps involved in the planning process which will require further engagement with the community, such as rezoning of land which will require further planning scheme amendment. It should be noted the framework plan has been amended to include a biolink along the western edge of the area referred to as Potential Growth Area 3, and it also includes proposed green links within this same growth area. The detailed planning for these links will occur at the time the land is considered for rezoning, which, as I mentioned, will require further planning scheme amendment. The other key issue associated with this growth area is the identified need to upgrade the twin bridges before rezoning of the land can be completed. The preparation and consideration of the Invalid Structure Plan has been during the time of this current Council. The Council has had the opportunity to review the structure plan during all phases of its development. Given the recent receipt of the panel report and that no further public consultation is required on this amendment, it is prudent for this Council to make the final decision. A new Council will not have the benefit of having reviewed the detail or been party to the preparation of the structure plan. Therefore, the recommendation before you tonight is that Council, 1, receive the panel report for Amendment C87 GPLA, noting the recommendations contained within, amend and adopt the Invalid Structure Plan 2019 as shown in Attachment 1 in accordance with the recommendations of the panel. 3, adopt Amendment C87 GPLA as shown in Attachment 2 in accordance with the recommendations of the panel report. And 4, request the Minister for Planning to approve Amendment C87 GPLA in accordance with Section 31 1 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Josipovic. Councillors' questions. Councillor Evans.
Well, basically, I'd like to move a motion to defer this.
Councillor Evans, I'll just go. I'll go to questions before a second motion. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Kirby.
Thank you. Mr. Jovic, I can never get it right. Mr. Jovic, can you help me, please?
Josipovic.
Josipovic, that's it. Thank you. Sorry.
That's fine.
I'm just, I got a bit tongue twisted then. I was just wondering, you were saying that there can be no more further consultation from the community. So where do we sit with that at the moment?
So as the panel report said, we've met all our statutory requirements. The draft amendment was publicly put on public exhibition, attracted 92 submissions. The submissions could not be resolved by council. Therefore, as per the Planning and Environment Act, a planning panel was appointed and considered all the submissions. They've come up with the recommendations which council officers have acted on and made all the changes that the planning panel have recommended. And the next step in the process is to either abandon the amendment or proceed with it and seek approval from the Minister for Planning.
Just a further question on that. It did go out to the public for public consultation. So I would therefore assume that it should come back to council with some further recommendations on what they see that they don't like or they might like changed for us to move this recommendation further.
So the panel, as I said, the panel considered all the submissions, and there's a fair bit of commentary in the panel report that talks about the submissions and etc., and was used to form part of their recommendations, clearly. In terms of council then making further changes to that, you'd need to be able to strategically justify those changes and go through a detailed process as the panel has. And then it's still subject to ministerial approval. But in response to your question, yes, there were a number of submissions and they were fully considered by the panel in forming their recommendations.
Thank you.
Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Rowe.
I'm just wondering, want to ask, where's council sit with the priority with the twin bridge upgrade? Will that be a priority for council and be put into our new new bridge upgrades or not?
Probably not a high priority unless there's a need to rezone the land that's identified as a future growth area, in which case council would negotiate with the applicant for funding of the replacement of that bridge. That's part of the reason, and that's the key reason the panel identified that area as a future growth area rather than an area that should be considered for rezoning in the near future. So it's subject to that, and council officers would, before contemplating rezoning that land, would need to, in conjunction with the developers, come up with a funding strategy to replace that bridge.
Okay. Just one other question I'd like to ask too, in relation to the land west side of the Invalid Township. I just noticed in some of the people have been asking questions in relation to the stage development of that area and the bushfire risk, does it have to be, it could be minimised through measures other than staged development. And I just noticed there's a lot of blocks, 5 acre blocks, 4 acre blocks along that area between there and Mars Road. Would it be feasible if perhaps, further up towards Mars Road was developed before the other because of a green site, like a green site?
Sorry. Yeah, so again, the panel contemplated the bushfire risk with respect to staging, etc., and whether that was an appropriate course. In the end, the planning panel came to the conclusion that with identifying the relevant offsets would satisfy that, and there was no real benefit in doing the staged approach. We would, of course, as the planning department, look at orderly development anyway, and we would also consider the fire risk. The buffer zone that's been recommended by the panel also goes to the bushfire risk, and we also, one of the recommendations the panel made from memory, I think it was recommendation 6, talked about a high level strategic points to be included in the amendment paperwork around bushfire risk, which has been included. So any future rezoning requests have to give due regard to those strategic directions that have been drafted by DELP or the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning in consultation with the CFA.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Gilbert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I please ask another question, just in relation to if this were to be deferred this evening? It's not going back out for community consultation again. Is that so? That's my understanding. That won't happen. So if we defer this evening, it will just come before potentially a new council, could potentially be 7 new councillors next, whenever in the future, that would then have to be briefed fully, presumably extensively, to then go and make a decision. Is that correct?
As a response from me, yes, that would have to come before the council, because in order for consideration to be made by the Minister for Planning, it needs a council resolution. The timing of the panel report and the receipt of the panel report and the whole amendment process has been within the life cycle of this council. So to bring a new council up to speed with all the nuances and all the detail, as you'll be aware through the attached documentation, it's quite a detailed review. It's quite a technical review with lots of supporting information. So to bring a new council up to speed would take some time, absolutely.
Thank you.
Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Kirby, sorry, Councillor Phelan, I thought you were trying to do. Sorry, Councillor Kirby.
I'm still confused as to why it went out for public consultation early so they could read the report, and yet here we are stating that we're not going to accept any more submissions from them. So I just really, really need that clarified, please.
So we went out to community consultation to inform the initial drafting of the structure plan. We then followed the statutory process. So as I mentioned earlier, the community had the opportunity to review all the documentation, and I would argue that they had, it was widely received because we had 92 submissions that came in. So clearly people have expressed their view and expressed their positions. And the process from there is then that the planning panel considers all the submissions in making its recommendation to council. If we were to go back out to community consultation again now, it is quite possible that we might not still be able to resolve all the submissions, and we might have to appoint another panel at a cost of, this panel I think costs council in the order of $40,000. So the system and the statutory process is designed to come to a conclusion at some point by giving everyone an open and transparent process, which this has been. Like I said, the panel considered all the submissions, made the recommendations. Council, with absolute regard to the community submissions and the hearings, and we now have reached that final step that we need to, the council now needs to resolve whether to move forward or not.
So just on that, so going forward, it just means that if this gets passed tonight and any future developments that come out of Invalid, the community will be able to be on the front foot and have a say into any proposal that's put forward.
Absolutely, within the context of the planning scheme. So this is a high-level strategic direction, and then the next step is that any land would need to be rezoned before it can be subdivided and sold into individual parcels, and that amendment process would follow the same process as this amendment process, i.e. there'd be the amendment documents will be drafted and prepared. It'd go out to public exhibition and consultation. And again, if not all issues can be resolved, the planning panel would be appointed to review all the submissions, hold the hearing, and then make recommendations.
Thank you. Thanks.
Councillor Gilbert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think my question may have actually been answered. It was in relation to the cost of the panel hearing and would there need possibly to be another one if we didn't pursue this tonight. Can you just clarify me I know it's already been said, but just to remind me how many community submissions were heard at the panel?
92 submissions.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, there were 92 submissions received, written submissions as part of the process, and about 18 submitters were parties to the panel hearing itself.
Thank you.
Councillor Evans.
What I'm hearing at the moment is I would like to have been talking about this in my motion of deferral, but there is the item there, item 2, which is basically we can amend documents, okay? Now, people have to remember a panel report.
Sorry, Councillor Evans, is there a question in there? It does sound like you're speaking.
Well, the question will be going to Phil Josephik. The panel report is something that can be amended, as you have spoken to in the document, by councillors at the adoption stage, correct?
Yes, correct. The council may choose to amend some of the content.
And would it be true for councillors to be able to amend, they would need to know the panel report virtually like the back of their hand and have appropriate input from the community to be able to do so? Would that be fair and reasonable?
They'd need to have the strategic justification to amend any content of the report, yes. The planning panel has articulated in some detail, in great detail, the community's views, and as I said, based on their submissions and their submissions at the panel itself, and has come up with the recommendations on balance of what they believe is the right way forward.
Councillors, any further questions? I'll seek a motion. Councillor Evans.
I'd still move the motion to defer.
Councillor Evans seeking to defer
until the new council. And I suppose logic would be that the deferral of this should be at least 3 months from now.
Seeking to defer for 3 months. Councillor Evans is moving that motion. Do I have a seconder? Seconding the motion, Councillor Kirby. Councillor Evans.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, this has been a very long-winded process that we have gone through. The unfortunate thing here is that the panel report has only been available to the community who actually put a lot of work into that. And it's only been done very recently. It was released on last Wednesday. And I am one person who reads every word and every line of every document. And I have read through that document twice and I still cannot get my head fully around that document. The issue is with any of these type of structure plans, we have under the Act the ability to amend a document. Now, I have read previous panel reports in the Shire where there has been a whole range of recommendations in them that did not come through to the planning policy level. Now, these are situations that can occur. And I think logic here is that if we were to defer it, now we don't know what the next council is going to be. They could be 7 new, they could be a balanced mix or whatever, but it makes no difference. Essentially, what will happen, in my view, is that the concerned residents of Invalid who have a few concerns, and I raised many of those concerns in last week's briefing, that they might want issues in the structure plan to be able to address that in a much easier manner than what will happen in the future. The future here is every single step going forward is likely to be contested. And if we can get a structure plan up with less of that in the initial stage, the likelihood of that being a less frictionless environment going forward is a no-brainer. So, and particularly when we're dealing with one of the most engaging communities in this Shire who have a real ownership of their township. So I'd say we have no choice but to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. Councillor Kirby seconding the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think regarding the objectors' 11 points that they've put forward in all the emails that have been sent around today, I think that the community should be given more time to reflect on the panel's decisions. It does concern their town. They have to live in it. They know what, they would like to see for the future for themselves and for their own children. This has been on our agenda for approximately 6 years. So when it first come to council to now. So I'm sure that a few more months is not going to hurt for to make sure we get it right for the residents of Invalid. And it also stated that in the report that the community consultation is what this is all about, and they feel that there is a need for better community consultation and for the Shire to be on board with Invalid. So for the sake of a few months, and this could be a good report for any new councillors to have a look at and to understand part of the planning process with the new council as well. And it's not just going to take in Invalid, but this is going to come up many times in the future in the next 4 years for any new councillor. And, it's all about being transparent and listening to your community. So that's why I'm seconding the motion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kirby. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion?
Yeah. Yes, Mr.
Councillor
Mayor, I would
Fillon.
like. Mr. Mayor, I just can't understand this. This has been going on for so many months now. We have done everything according to the law to get this thing approved or knocked out. We went to the people, they put in their submissions, we couldn't make a decision. We went to a panel hearing, which is a statutory authority that looks at all these, that looks at these things and makes a judgment. There was 92 submissions. They read them or listened to people. I think it was 28 submitters, and we have done everything properly. Deferring this is just ridiculous. You either abandon it or you go ahead with it. Deferral mean nothing. We are a council that are elected for a 4-year period. We've been down this track and we've done everything properly. We've done nothing wrong here. There's a few people in Invalid that you will never satisfy no matter what we do. So they want to pull the wheels of everything. They want to go and have a look at the money we spent on the football ground and the facilities they've got up there. We are looking after Invalid. And I think this is totally ridiculous and we should move the motion and proceed forward with the recommendation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Phelan. Would any other councillor like to speak for the motion? Any councillor like to speak against the motion? Councillor Evans, would you like to close?
I mean, in closing of this situation, as I said, we in the past, as a council, have probably never actually put up amendments to a panel report. And I think we should be mature enough to be able to progress forward from that. These times of, under the legislation of the Local Government Act now, openness and transparency is paramount. So we have no choice but to basically work towards that, and what happened in the past no longer happens anymore. The situation with Councillor Phelan's opinion that we make all the decisions and that's it, I think those days definitely are gone, and we need to embrace that. The fundamental thing is, this is their town. They need to have as much of an opportunity to have a good understanding of that panel report. And I do not believe the shorter period of time has enabled them to do it. Now, the new councillors, I have no worry whatsoever that any new councillor looking at this process and then acting on any recommendations from the community for amendment only. We're only talking amendment here. We're not talking about getting rid of this policy, okay? It's only small amendments. That'll be brought to the chamber. They'll be debated just as they normally should be. And with that, this will then go through in the normal procedure. So the process is there. We just want to make sure that it's right, because it's going to be a template for all of our other small towns, because we're going exactly the same with every one of our small townships, which with Invalid in the case here, the population potentially will triple. And as they clearly state on the 15-year supply of land, Invalid will blow out enormously in the future in size. So they need to have ownership of their own structure plan. And I believe, and unfortunately, there isn't a single councillor here tonight who is a member of the Invalid community. Had we had one who was in that position, I would be taking their guidance really well. But unfortunately, we are all remote from them, and they need our protection to get their structure plan correct. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. Councillors, I'll put it to a vote of deferral. All those in favour? Those against? The motion is defeated. I'll revert back to...
I'll move the recommendation, Mr.
Councillor
Chairman.
Phelan. Councillor Phelan, Moving the recommendation, seconding the motion, Councillor Gilbert. Councillor Phelan.
Mr. Mayor, I think I've said a little bit on it. I believe that we have done the process. We've gone through the process, the proper process. There's people in Invalid that we are never going to satisfy no matter what we do. To defer it to a new council that doesn't understand planning, and I think there's people who are sitting around this table tonight that don't understand it. We have done the right thing. The people have had the right. How many times are we going to go back to them? And what's the cost of this going to be? And it just goes on and on and on till they get their way. It's not our fault that there's no Invalid representative on the council. That's their fault for not putting someone up. And we are not going to be governed, or I am not going to be governed by people that continually try to pull this council down. We are elected by the wider majority of this community or Shire, and we are doing the right thing by everybody here. They mightn't like it, and I accept that some people won't like it. But at the end of the day, we have done everything according to the law book, and we've come through with probably a decision that a few people don't like. So I'm prepared to move the motion and move on. This is we have been here for 4 years, and this is a decision we've got to make. And if we are not prepared to make a decision now and walk away from it, we've got no right to be on the council.
Thank you very much, Councillor Phelan. Councillor Gilbert, seconding the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would also like to add that deferring it for 3 months is not feasible in this climate either. If we note that 3 months would then take us to Christmas and then no council meeting in January, it wouldn't even return till February. So that would be another 5 months as well, probably. I probably don't appreciate David Evans, Councillor Evans, and being rude with his speaker off, but anyway, and that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gilbert. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Councillor Evans.
Basically, I said 3 council meetings. So Councillor Gilbert, add that up. The situation.
Check the minutes.
Going forward, if Councillor Phelan happened to go to the briefing last week and read all his notes, he would have heard a lot of things that were discussed then. Doing things always as he wants in this Shire isn't what everybody wants. The fundamentals are there was a lot of issues down there in terms of the fire, the green wedges, the situation with how the town changes, and the funding arrangements for the bridges, the intersections, all of that. None of that has been addressed. All of that is going to be addressed in the future. So essentially, we are setting ourselves up for a lot of conflict going forward. Now, the panel report, which I said, and I have read many panel reports, and I wonder how many councillors have, where panel recommendations are not accepted in a structure plan and things like that. They miss it constantly. We seem to think that 2 people in a panel, and 2 people is an upsize, usually it's only 1. Yet we'll go to a court case and we'll have 12 jurors to make a decision. Yet we're happy to have 1 or 2 people who focus in this panel area in planning to be the arbitrator of a decision. Now, I think that in the future there will be issues here and big issues going forth. I can see with the development potential in Invalid, with the fire hazard that is going to go forward in the future, which wasn't addressed, that we could probably lose half of Invalid in one of those terrible summer days that we have occasionally. And that'll be all because of what we have put together in the structure plan and not taken into the full depth of the problems that could exist. And if I was in that area, I would like to have a lot stronger say in relationship to that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Would anyone like to speak for the motion?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Hansford, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Reading through the objections and the emails and that we've received today, community consultation is one that comes up quite a lot. And the community consultation that we went through as a council with the Invalid community has been gone over many times tonight. The panel hearing also went through a phase of community consultation. They listened, the panel listened, we listened, and all of those inputs together, we end up with this panel report. Now, while I don't agree with absolutely everything that's in the panel report, we need to have a way forward. And as Councillor Gilbert has just explained, you know, it could be 6 months away before anything happens. I don't think it can just sit there for that amount of time in limbo. I think it's probably worse to be in that limbo than it is to have a good or bad decision made. This is also a structured plan. This is not the absolute ins and outs of every subdivided block and every little piece that's going to happen within Invalid. This is just a document that guides that, and individual subdivisions and what happens within the town will be subject to planning and approvals as that process goes along. So even though that we approve this, this doesn't mean that it is the be all and end all and the last say that anybody has. So those things can be brought up into the future. And I believe right now that making the decision as we are today is the right one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hansford. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm sorry, but how disrespectful are we to the community of Invalid? This is absolutely ridiculous. We had 92 people make submissions to the VCAT hearing. These people have had 5 days to put to read the report, go through it, and put submissions in tonight for council. As our mayor said, there was 2 or 3 people that wanted to speak tonight, and they're going to get an answer in writing after this report comes through. They've actually trying to put submissions in and put points forward. We owe it to this community. This is not about us sitting here on the last night of our council. This is about going forward and having community representation out there and telling us what they like, what they want. One of the things in the report was about ember attacks. Now, that has not been dealt with, and I truly believe that when you can have an ember attack up to 10 kilometres in a bushfire situation, this township could be under attack at any time. Now, I don't want to take that with me to the end of my council term, but I think as all councillors, we have to make the right decisions for the Invalid community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kirby. Anyone like to speak for the motion? Anyone like to speak against the motion? Sorry, Councillor, I seen you come off mute there. I'm taking it. Sorry, Councillor, speaking either for or against the motion?
For the motion. Look, I just think we have spent a lot of money on this. We spent 40k or more. We're at the crossroads tonight. And to be honest with you, a lot of these questions that were asked tonight, they will be addressed, okay? They will be addressed at the time of rezoning, okay? So it's not the end of the world. So that's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Phelan to close.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think that there's been a fair bit of discussion. It is not the end of the world. They've still got time in the planning process to object, and this is just a structure plan for the Shire. Councillor Kirby said they've got 5 days. They've had 3 months and they've been heard, 92 submissions. So to say that we've only given them 5 days is ridiculous. And the thing is that we've done everything according to the book. Councillor Evans goes on about me not going to the briefing the other day. I don't have to go down and listen to him grandstand. I am able to make up my decision on the evidence as presented. That is why we employ officers to carry out the research work on an amendment or planning. We listened to the people. They then went to the panel hearing and were heard there. And because the decision doesn't suit them, that's not that they don't want to accept it. To put it off is going to go on and on and on, and it'll end up in the same spot and then up another $40,000. The people of Invalid have got to get over it, move on, and then become part of the planning process, and it will all work out. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Phelan. Councillors, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried. And just before we move on, I would like to thank, as councillors rightfully said, there was a huge amount of process with that. The panel hearing was 6 days of experts there involved with that process, and it was full credit to everyone there. I tuned into that numerous times, and both the residents from Invalid were fantastic in their submissions, and also the staff involved there, both Alicia and Laura in particular did a fantastic job on the other end. So long process. Thank you very much. Item 7.5, Amendment C93 GPLA, Revisited Land Subject to Inundation Overlay, Batesford. Again, Director Josipovic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The amendment has been made at the request of the Ramsey Property Group, who seek to amend the Golden Plains planning scheme to reduce the extent of the land subject to inundation overlay for an area of land adjacent to the Moorabool River and a nearby tributary in Batesford as part of the Riverstone estate. Recent earthworks undertaken in accordance with the planning permit issued by Council and a works in waterways permit issued by the Corangamite Catchment Management Authority have altered the floodplain, rendering the current extent of the land subject to inundation overlay as outdated. The preparation of the amendment has been undertaken in consultation with the Corangamite Catchment Management Authority, who support the proposed amendment. The amendment is proposed to follow a fast-track process in accordance with Section 20, Part 4 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987. That section of the Act enables the Minister for Planning to amend a planning scheme with exemption from notice requirements. The amendment seeks to amend the land subject to inundation overlay mapping in a particular area and will not make any changes to the ordinance. The formal planning scheme maps are currently being prepared by Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning. The recommendation is the Council resolves to request the Minister for Planning to prepare, adopt and approve Amendment C93 GPLA without notice under Section 20, Part 4 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Director Josipovic. Councillors, any questions? I'll seek a mover. Moving the motion, Councillor Evans. Seconding the motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Kirby. Councillor Evans.
Look, basically, I'm not entirely happy what happened down at Riverstone with work on the river floodplain down there, which is a separate issue to this particular application. Having gone down there and had a good look at it, definitely there are issues regarding the blocks of land that are going to be sold, but that'll be buyer beware. And I suppose the other issue going forth is the fact that in the future, when there's higher density development in that area, the amount of water that will flow through those properties might surprise a few of those buyers in the future. Do us as council have any impact on that? Not really, but we'll probably get the blame if somebody's backyard half washes away. But under the application, that needs to be addressed. Would I, as a developer, sell blocks like that? Probably not. But then again, that's their choice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor Kirby, seconding the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I think Councillor Evans said it all. And once again, if I buyer beware, and as you can see with the amount of water that can come up in that floodplain, I think it's something that every resident in that subdivision needs to look at in the future, especially if you're purchasing a property there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kirby. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? No councillor speaking against the motion. I'll put it to vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 7.6, Street Tree Guide, Director Josipovic. And I might just put in that we might head for a break. I've got a couple of text messages from councillors seeking a 5-minute break. Maybe we do that after this item. Director Josipovic, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Street trees are a highly valued asset in Golden Plate Shire, providing significant economic, social, environmental, ecological and aesthetic benefits to our communities. Mature street trees are a dominant feature in the tree-lined avenues, street parks and reserves of this municipality. Currently, there is no guide for council or developers for recommended appropriate trees. Consequently, every time street trees are required, the decision for what species is appropriate may be made by different people. This risks the planting of less appropriate species, leading to costly outcomes such as increased maintenance or early replacement. The Street Tree Guide includes different types of trees in a range of sizes and forms that will likely be successful in various conditions across the two bioregions of our Shire, being the plains and the hills. The guide includes native and exotic species. Landscape plans that select species from this guide will require less scrutiny, ultimately resulting in a reduced workload for staff involved in assessing development proposals. There are a number of species of street trees currently placed within the Shire that are not included in this guide. In any given location, there may be hundreds of suitable species, and this guide cannot list them all. Other species can be suggested and will be considered on a case-by-case basis. The recommendation before you tonight is that Council note the development of the approved Street Tree Guide. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Director Josipovic. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Mr. Josipovic. I was just wondering if you've taken into account fruit trees on nature strips. Thank you.
No, we haven't at this stage taken account of fruit trees on nature strips, only because of the additional maintenance required for the fruit itself and picking the fruit, and then fruit falling off trees can cause all sorts of issues. That said, if there was an application or someone wanted a fruit tree on a nature strip, we would consider it on a case-by-case basis. But unless there's someone there to look after them, they can be maintenance intensive and problematic if they drop the fruit on footpaths and roads, etc.
Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Hanson.
I was just going to move, Mr. Mayor.
If there's no other objections with councillors, I'll take that as moving the motion. Moving the motion, Councillor Hansard. Seconding the motion, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Hansard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a great document. It's something that we haven't had here at council before. This will improve efficiencies within Works Department. More than happy to move the motion. Thank you.
Seconding the motion, Councillor Rowe.
Yeah, no, look, listen, I think it's just an absolute no-brainer. This policy, it's a good guide, as has been mentioned, for the ratepayers, developers, and the staff. And the bottom line, it's eliminating the problems that we have down the track in relation to the footpaths, roads, and sometimes you have issues with neighbours trying to build next door with root matter that's come in from a neighbouring block. So I'll support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rowe. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? With no, Councillor Evans.
I'm actually speaking for the motion. The situation was 12 months ago, I had a ratepayer ring me up complaining about a situation where their property was going to be underpinned by street trees in the nature strip because they were on a corner block. And I thought, well, this is strange. You would have thought we had a policy in place to actually eliminate that. And a little bit of research and went to the CEO, and lo and behold, we didn't have a policy back then, and which was actually, we were far behind where other councils are in this space. And I'm just so happy that we have now developed the policy. And with that, councillors in the future, hopefully, aren't going to be rang up by a resident and complaining about an issue in association of this. But the key success of this policy is the proactiveness of the council officers with developments. It's no good for a developer to put up a proposal and then select his trees off our list without taking into account the appropriate tree where the root ball won't get under the foundations of potential buyers or into the roadway underneath our roads and undermine them, or any of the other services. So it's a good document, but to be working perfectly in the future, it needs to be very carefully handled by our officers so that we do not have these issues developing. So it should be an accompanying document beside it that actually addresses those issues rather than just this descriptive document. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. Would any other councillor like to speak for or against? With nobody speaking against the motion, I'll put it straight to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. I have just received another text message that someone can wait a little bit longer. So if we want to, I'll aim for 8 o'clock if that's all right, councillors, and sort of 2 hours and then have a 5-minute break. Is that okay? Thank you. Item 7.7, Golden Plains Shire Council 2019 to 2020 Annual Report, Part 1. Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm really pleased to present this report to you. I know it's a procedural report in that each year we do need to present council with an annual report and a financial statement, but very pleasing to see the way the documents come together and more importantly, to reflect on what's happened over the last 12 months. It is worthwhile, and I not only with the council and with the community, but I'll be doing the same with the staff to encourage everyone to have a look at it. It is hard to remember where we were in July last year and then what we've accomplished over the 12-month period. But there is something in the document that each and every one of our staff will look back on and realize they had a part in playing in some way over the last 12 months. And hopefully each of the councillors will look at the document as well and be able to look at some of the projects, some of the initiatives, some of the change of policy and new direction that's happened over a 12-month period. So again, we're putting the report to you as we must to get council to endorse the annual report. I do note that the financial statements, as across all of the state of Victoria, are delayed this year because of the auditor's delay in getting the financial audited approved statements. but those will be incorporated into this document and presented to the new council in November for the adoption. But we do put the document to you for your endorsement because we felt it was something that this council should actually endorse before it walks out after tonight's meeting, although we do recognize the new council will have to adopt it. But we put it to you with great pleasure, and hopefully there's something in there that each of you are able to reflect on. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. CEO. Councillors, any questions? Would anyone like to put a motion? Moving the motion, Councillor Evans. Seconding the motion, Councillor Kirby. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, this is a housekeeping document that we get every year in relationship to basically presentation, which then goes off for ratification with the Auditor General. And as spoken, it will be approved by the next council. There are some issues in there that I'd like to just highlight, and that is in regard to the waste charges. The waste charges on the previous year contributed 490,000 in profit. The waste charges in the last financial year, which is the one we're looking at now, amounts to another 286,000 in profit. Now that's a combined total of 776,000 K. Now I have asked that council would be wise to start spending that money on the very first tip rehabilitation. Now, we had put down $1.655 million for rehabilitation of the Ropewood and the Teesdale tips. We now have half that money, effectively, and I would suggest that in the next budget, which is being put together at Christmas, that this money is allocated to get one of those tips done. The reason for that is that in the document, we have found that the approximate cost of rehabilitation has gone up over 3.5%, 50,000 in 1 year. Now, us putting this money aside in consolidated, not in consolidated, but actually in a trust fund, we won't get interest that can catch the inflation of the cost of that tip rehabilitation. So it'd be wise for council to go ahead and make that decision. Another interesting thing in the document is rate debtors. And now this is going back to last year, starting from June. Our rate debtors in the Shire during that period, which was the early part of COVID, had gone up 14%. So our Shire is hurting, okay? We're not a business as usual Shire. So I'd hate to think where our rate debtors are since then. The other thing is the doubtful debts. Now, the doubtful debts have gone up from 126,000 to 251,000. Again, that's a sign of the hardship that's going on out there. Now, the Shire does have policies of assisting in that area and paying their due debts early, but these are debts that we will not get back for obvious reasons. So we are going into a real hardship zone going forward, and I would basically consider that we're probably going in deeper now. So something that I was very concerned back at the budget, but we are not in a good position, our ratepayers, and we need to be more empathetic about that in the future. And we need to spend more time looking at these financial statements because they tell you a lot. You need to compare them with previous years because that's the trend line that we must always be aware of. You cannot just sit down and think you can have one glance at these and make a decision based on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. Councillor Kirby.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad that we can pass this on to the next incoming council. When they do get to read this budget, I think they're going to find our end of the year's budget. I think they're going to find the amount of things that we've achieved in the last 4 years has been fantastic. And it's not just the bigger towns like Bannockburn and Smythesdale who have been getting a lot of the money coming through. It's been a lot of the smaller towns as well. So, for example, Haddon and Invalid, Lethbridge. So we can actually say that a lot of these small towns have been getting a few dollars spent their way. So I think we can all be proud of some of the achievements that we've made in the last 4 years. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kirby. Any other councillor like to speak against the motion? With no other councillor speaking against the motion, I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Item 7.8, the review of instrument of appointment and authorisation, Planning and Environment Act 1987. Director O'Sullivan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report is really a procedural process as it was last updated and reviewed by Council in July 2020, but it's really to update in relation to a new statutory planner who has been appointed, and because this under the Planning and Environment Act 1987 it cannot be delegated and must be done through a resolution of council. This is a request to authorise that new staff member onto the list. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director O'Sullivan. Councillors, any questions? Anyone like to move the motion? Moving the motion, Councillor Evans. Second the motion, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, this is basic housekeeping situation, nothing more than that. We don't need to discuss. Thank you very much.
Councillor Les Rowe.
I'd just like to reinforce what Councillor Evans has said, and yeah, he's dead right. It's just a bit of housekeeping, so yeah, we just need to implement it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rowe. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? No councillor speaking against the motion. I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 7.9, governance rules. Consideration of review. Director O'Sullivan again, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is to note that a council resolution at the 25th of August council meeting required a report to come back for this meeting, the 21st of September, to consider a further review of the governance rules. And we are recommending, our officers are recommending that the review, do not to proceed with that governance rules at this time. The main reason to that is that there was a formal process undertaken part of the last review that included development of the new draft version. There was a council resolution to put that out to public consultation. We did receive submissions. They were considered and reviewed before the final development of the adoption, which was then adopted by council at the 25th of August. Following that, we have also taken into account further feedback received from specific councillors, Councillor Evans, who have spent time with, and as a result, we feel that the current version that is in place is adequate and is also consistent with what's across the sector. We also note that due to the process that this would need to go back out for public exhibition if there were any further changes made to the governance rules as is. And as a result, we'd be recommending that this wouldn't come back to council until February. And then it would, as I say, would need to then go back out for public exhibition after that time. So as I say, due to the process that it's already been through and the feedback that's already been received and taken into account, it is recommended that not to proceed with the further governance rules. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director O'Sullivan. Councillors, any questions?
I'll move the motion.
Moving the motion, Councillor Evans. Can I have a councillor seconding the recommendation? Councillor Hansford. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, with the government rules, they come in with the new Local Government Act, and they've been rather comprehensive in many areas that we have to look at. And there were some issues regarding the submissions that come in and they didn't get appropriate attention put to them to be able to be addressed. And as an exercise, I think as a new council, the new councillors, you know, whoever they are, governance is a area that has now been tidied up by the new Local Government Act. And with that, there's a whole range of things which, to be perfectly honest, when I first got on council, it took me a long while to get around all this stuff. We are doing a lot better now with how we now have, I think, 2 dedicated people in the governance area, which now gives us a lot better data to work with and a lot better updating on what things are going on. So having the new councillors come in and have another look at this to be able to familiarise themselves with it, which will be a good training initiative for them. And also there'll be things in there that I believe the new councillors may think, oh, well, maybe we should have another little look here or there or whatever. Well, they may not. And again, I think it's a very good opportunity for that to be successfully done next year with the new council.
Sorry, point of order, Councillor Evans. The motion that you have put forward is the recommendation. There's no talk of item 2 point there clearly says do not proceed with a review of government rules at this time. You seem to be talking to something different.
Yes, at this time, that's why they want to review it, bring it back for review.
Yep, so that will come back for review at its next cycle.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. As point clarity, Councillor Hansford, seconding the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, similar points of view. With the direction that Eric took when he took over as CEO of the Shire, a lot of things changed tact, and certainly one of those was governance and the way we did things in council. So to have that change and then have the new Local Government Act back up some of that and extend it further was a good thing. And certainly if the new council feels that it should be looked at, then we can certainly do that after the election. So happy to second the motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hansford. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? With no councillor speaking against the motion, I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 7.10, Financial Quarter 4 Report. Again, please, Director O'Sullivan, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this report provides a summary of our end of year financial position, and I am pleased to note that we have ended up 500,000 more favourable to our revised budget. So pretty much coming in on what we'd had anticipated, and also noting that our capital works program, we were achieved $21.6 or $4 million in capital projects over this last year. And I will note that this is on top of some sort of major, I guess, impacts, especially around the COVID, which did cause some issues in delivering all of our projects that we had in place. But overall, the year has been successful in the number of projects that have been delivered through the capital, and also noting that due to against the budget of 28 million. The main reason for not coming in on that budget was due to some of the projects, especially the Civic Centre, which is spanning in multiple years in relation to that project. So overall, it has come in on budget, and we've delivered a number of programs. And I'll also note that some of the main variances were related to employees, where there's been just some variances in turnover, where we've had recruitment of new employees versus when people have departed, and also some lower costs in our materials and contracts, as I say, is related to the COVID-19, where we were unable to deliver all of our projects. I'll also note that there was a number of contracts awarded in this last quarter, which are outlined in the report. And I'll take the rest as read. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Director O'Sullivan. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Evans.
In our documentation here, the asset management system, which we have contracted for, does that include training of officers? Because that is a very specialised area. And I went to a meeting up in Melbourne with council and local government across Australia, who were talking about this particular problem. And the major thing that they were focusing on was the poor ability of councils to work in that space. And the other major problem was having people out there capable of being able to do that work. So could you explain a little bit more on that contract if possible?
Yeah, absolutely. So through the Mayor, I'll note that system that we've procured has been undertaken and procured based on an expert panel headed up by our works manager, but also noting that in the last 12 months, a lot of work and time and effort has been put into resourcing the asset management area. We've now been able to recruit Wendy, has come from the City of Melbourne, has a significant amount of experience in the asset management space. And we've also, she'll be supported by someone else who has come across into the asset management space. So we now have two very well-versed and very capable support in that area, and they will be leading that project and also in support with both the IT and other experts across the organisation to ensure that that's delivered. And as also noted, that there's been a lot of work done in the data cleansing of all of our assets to ensure that the data going into the system is as accurate and up to date as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Kirby. Sorry, you're on mute, Councillor Kirby.
Thank you. Sorry. Just regarding our employee costs, it was stated that we were $1.8 million lower than the revised budget. Can you tell us what the bottom figure is now after we've had contractual people in taking over those jobs? Thanks.
Yeah. So the bottom number is 16.45 million for our actual employee costs for the year.
Sorry, Director O'Sullivan, but the question was, it was 1.8 million lower than revised. So what was that budget? What was that bottom figure by the time we took into account the contractors? So by the time we paid for all the contractors to come in and fill those positions, what sort of figures were we looking at?
Yeah, so our employee benefits includes the costs relating to relief employee staff. So if we have contractors brought in to backfill employees, they are included in the costs, in our employee benefit costs.
Thank you.
Any further questions, councillors? I'll seek a mover. seeking a mover or lapsing for a moving the motion, Councillor Evans. Seconding the motion, Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we were getting tired. Yeah, look, normally I would have went through this statement with a fine-tooth comb, but I am winding down a little bit because I'm not standing for council this year. But generally speaking, look, we're going in a nice direction, and I have to give a lot of credit to our CEO here. A lot of the issues around, keeping our employment costs tight in this type of environment is very critical, and it's a skill that'll work very well going into the future of this council. It was one of the issues that I actually campaigned on, to look at those type of costs and all the other aspects of how we're actually truly managed in the final quarter is probably not as open as we would normally see, because of the fact that so many officers are not working in their normal environment, working from home and other situations like that. The participation of our officers in the communities that they do work in, they're not doing it. They haven't done it for quite a while now. So it's probably a little bit of distortion in there, how we're actually providing our services as well as we would normally do. But the interesting thing is, if we have been cutting back in that space, that shows our capacity that we probably can do that in the future, because people have been able to accept. So it's probably a very interesting quarter to actually reflect upon going forward. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. Councillor Kirby seconding the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, one of the other points that I'd also like to make is that the $1 million write-off on the Skipton to Ballarat rail trail, I don't know where that sort of come from, where we're claiming for a rail trail that's not even in our Shire. So I think we've done a good job of finding out that money should not be allocated to that rail trail. But other than that, I agree with everything Councillor Evans has just said, and I think it's a fantastic effort that we're 500,000 up this year. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kirby. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? With no councillor speaking against the motion, I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Councillors, I'll seek someone to move for standing orders. We've been going for 2 hours, and I'll come back at 8:05 with just a bit of a leg stretch and a cup of tea or toilet break. Moving the motion, Councillor Gilbert. Seconding the motion, Councillor Hansford. All those in favour? The motion is carried. And councillors, if I could just remind everyone to turn the mute off, because the live streaming will continue. So as you yell at your kids in the background, no one can hear. No joke. Councillor Kirby, if you are there, can you put your camera on, please? Thank you very much. Can I have a councillor move that we resume suspended standing orders? Moving the motion, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Feeling seconding the motion. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 7.11, in principle performance statement and in principle financial statements for the year ended 30th of June 2020. Again, Director O'Sullivan to introduce the report, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I will note that this report is to present the interim financial or the financial statements for noting. The Audit and Risk Committee, having delegated power to act and in accordance with Section 132 of the Local Government Act, approved the statements in principle and now submit the statements to the auditor for reporting on the audit. The purpose of the report is to note the Audit and Risk Committee has approved this, and I'll also note the Audit and Risk approved this based on the positive outcomes that the external auditor highlighted at the Audit and Risk Committee around a number of the issues that identified over the last 2 years, 2019 and 2020, had been completed. This included items such as operating procedures being updated, bank signatories being removed for those pre-existing employees who'd recently left, some additional security around our payroll bank file, and also how we've managed through the landfill provisions. So I will note that based on the feedback from the Audit and Risk Committee, that the council note that the financial statements and that these will be attached to the November annual report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director O'Sullivan. Councillors, is there any questions? If there's no questions, would someone like to move the motion? Moving the motion, Councillor Rowe. Seconding the motion, Councillor Evans. Councillor Rowe, please. Councillor Rowe, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry about that, folks. I'm not very good with technology, as you can see. So I must have pressed the wrong button and yeah, nearly got sent up. No, look, listen. This is just part of the, some in-house stuff that we've got to do. And as I said, this has got to be forwarded off. We've got a short time frame, so got to be forwarded off to the minister. So yeah, so just a bit of housekeeping. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rowe. My screen is. So was that you, Councillor Evans, seconded that? Sorry.
Yeah. Look.
Who's? Sorry, Councillor Evans. Yep. Sorry. Well, yeah. No, my screen just moved. Sorry. Thank you.
Look, it's purely housekeeping. No problem whatsoever. Don't need to discuss it. Thank you very much.
Would anyone like to speak against the motion? With no one speaking against the motion, I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Item 7.12, Audit and Risk Committee Report, 8th of September 2020. Again, Director O'Sullivan to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is to note that the Audit and Risk Committee meeting was held on the 8th of September 2020. A number of reports were discussed and associated mainly with end-of-year financial statements, end-of-year governance reports, and also business continuity planning, especially in the current environment with COVID. But otherwise, I'll take the report as read and take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director O'Sullivan. Councillor Evans with a question.
I was going through the Vargo report on this one, and there was a few items of concern there. One was in terms of the signatories for the Bendigo Bank. Appears that we haven't had that up to date, which is a concern because of the fact that we had the audit done last year by, I think it was IBAC the inspectorate regarding things where we weren't actually up to speed. So I was very disappointed to see that, and also the fact that the purchase order authorisation of the CEO again wasn't brought up to date, and that's probably 18 months, I would say. So in regard to this, my question is, why are we still making these mistakes at this point? Or was it merely a case that the auditor was looking back too far?
Thank you, Councillor Evans, and through the Mayor, I will note that the report highlights a number of 2019 audit findings. So the findings you're referring to relate to items that were identified not this year, but the previous year. And this report always flags and identifies what has been resolved and now has been closed off. So the report isn't just around raising issues, but also highlights that issues have been closed and resolved so that it closes out that loop. So I acknowledge your points, but I do acknowledge that those items were identified 2 years ago and they were rectified 12 months ago as well. And as a result, they have been closed off. Thank you.
The statement for the CEO's sign-off of 400,000 should have been addressed. It shouldn't have come up in this report.
So through the Mayor, no, that is a 2019 item, and it was included just to highlight that there was 2019 findings still included in the management letter from the auditors.
Councillors, any further questions?
Yeah.
Councillor Hansford.
No, I've just got terrible connection issues. I've got a couple of dramas going on here.
With no further questions, I'll seek a mover. Moving the motion for the Audit and Risk Committee report, Councillor Rowe. Seconding the motion, Councillor Gilbert. Councillor Rowe, please. Sorry, Councillor Rowe, you may have to get the Brains Trust back to click yourself off mute. No, you're all good. Good on you. Cheers.
Okay, sorry, I could leave it on, but the family are cooking here, so you wouldn't get much. You wouldn't get much sense. But anyway, look, listen. I just like to say this is very similar to before. This is just some in-house stuff, but I do note what Councillor Evans' questions were, and I can see that they've been addressed. But in saying that, I've just noted I've been on the Audit and Risk Committee for the last 12 months as a member, and I've noticed myself and through our independent auditors how far the Shire has come in relation, to be honest with you, with the checks and balances in this area. So it's good to see there's programs in place now to protect us as an organisation. So I'd just like to thank, the CEO, especially CEO Eric Braslis, and also Director Sullivan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Gilbert, seconding the motion.
Yes, the Audit and Risk Committee is a very important one, and it's great to hear and see that it's working so efficiently.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gilbert. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? With no councillor speaking against the motion, I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 7.12, the Reserve Road Rokewood Bridge Replacement Tender. Director Josipovic to briefly introduce the report, please.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I think you'll find it 7.13, isn't it?
Yep, my apologies if I said anything else. I thought I had said 7.13, but I must have. My apologies. So 7.13, Reserve Road Rokewood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report seeks to appoint a preferred contractor for the replacement of the Reserve Road Bridge in Rokewood. Excuse me. The Reserve Road Bridge is located 0.8 kilometres west of Warrook Road over the crossing of Curragh Creek in Rokewood. I hope I got those pronunciations right. The new proposed bridge will replace the old single-lane timber bridge with a two-lane concrete bridge designed for unrestricted loading. The purpose of the proposed replacement of the bridge is to allow access for heavier and oversized farm machinery and vehicles across the creek. The replacement of the bridge will significantly reduce the maintenance burden on council, and is expected that the new bridge will achieve a 100-year design life. The replacement of this bridge was identified in council's 10-year replacement program. This project is fully funded through the federal government Local Roads and Community Infrastructure Program for 2021. This particular program aims to assist community-led recovery from COVID-19 by supporting local jobs, firms and procurement. Funding is conditional on all approved projects being completed by 30th of June 2021. The allocated budget from the program for this project is $700,000. The tender was advertised between 8th of August 2020 to 9th of September 2020 through Council's eProcure portal, as well as the Geelong Advertiser, Ballarat Courier and the Golden Plains Times. At the close of the tender period, 8 tenders were received. The details of all the tenders and the evaluation is included as a confidential attachment to this report. The recommendation before you tonight is that Council 1 resolves to award tender GPSC RFT 052020 to construct the Reserve Road Bridge replacement Rokewood to Begbie's Contracting for the sum of $393,583.86 exclusive of GST. 2, note that the earthworks associated with the road approaches up to and including the abutments are to be carried out by Council's in-house work teams as separate works additional to the contract sum. And 3, note that any unspent funds from the approved Local Roads and Community Infrastructure Grant for this project will be reallocated to the Meredith Shelford Road Widening Project as per Council's resolution of 28th July 2020. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Director. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Rowe?
Is it? Can you hear me? Yep.
Yep, can hear you, Councillor Rowe.
Yep. Just one thing. There's a little bit of probably, I would say, a bit of a disappointment that one of the suppliers from New South Wales, there was some concern about border controls and etc. Trying to get products delivered before Christmas, and there wasn't a lot of difference, to be honest with you, between them and the others. So I just see there's a bit of a disappointment, but it was a $10,000 roughly a saving on it. That was all.
Sorry, Councillor Rowe, is there a question in there?
Yeah. My question is why would the panel disallow them on because of the border controls with the COVID-19?
The panel wouldn't have disallowed it because of that, but would have certainly taken that into account for the evaluation scoring, particularly given the requirement to complete the works by the end of the financial year under the program guidelines. The timeline of the project and the timeline requirements of the project were clearly set out in the tender documents, which all the tenderers responded. And I guess the final point I'd make on that is that the preferred contractor is very much in keeping with the program guidelines in terms of supporting local economy, etc., as the company is actually based in Haddon in the Shire, which is not always the case when we award contracts. That's not the sole reason that obviously they got the job, because there was the published evaluation criteria. All the tenders were assessed against the published evaluation criteria and weightings, but certainly that boosted their score in the local content criterion.
Any further questions, councillors? With no further questions, I'll seek a mover. Moving the motion, Councillor Kirby. Seconding the motion, Councillor Hansford. Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a great outcome for the residents of Rokewood who live in the back roads there, and who, especially if they involved in the farming aspect. A lot of them, as you said, do have the big machinery, and some of these roads are not up to par, as well as the bridges. So to have a contract awarded to one of our local businesses, I think is a must and a win for our whole Shire. So on that, I think going forward with COVID, the more stimulus that we can have within our communities is going to be great for the future. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kirby. Councillor Hansford, seconding the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's great to see that we've got a budget of 700 and we've got a price that comes in at 393. Way under the budget. It's a local company, and it's really good to see that we've got people within our Shire that can do this scale of project, put money back into the local communities, and then the money that's left over from the projected budget is going to go back into a local road nearby as well. So it's a win-win for everyone. Really happy to be seconding this.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hansford. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? With no councillor speaking against the motion, I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 7.14, outgoing mayoral end of council term speeches. I'll start with an outgoing mayoral speech, which would usually be done under different at the end of the mayoral vote. This will be our last council meeting, so I will start off and just go around for those to each councillor. Firstly, it has been an absolute honour, privilege and pleasure to serve as the Mayor of the Golden Plains Shire this year. And I would like to thank my councillor colleagues for your confidence in electing me and for the opportunity to serve another year as Mayor. I would like to also acknowledge and thank Councillor Joanne Gilbert for again taking up the position of Deputy Mayor of the Golden Plains Shire. Joanne, I've greatly appreciated and valued your support and advice throughout the year, and appreciate your leadership in council and service to the community as a councillor and a deputy mayor. And most importantly, I'd like to sincerely thank my family and friends for their support this past year and the whole council term. To my wife, Julie, and our 3 beautiful daughters, I greatly appreciate and value your love, encouragement this year, and staying quiet during meetings such as this in the background. It's a tradition that at the end of the council term, the outgoing mayor delivers a speech at the final meeting. Certainly, it has been a busy 12 months, and there have been several important highlights for me, council and the Shire this year, including the opening of stage 1 of the Bannockburn Heart, serving as the chair of the Central Highlands Council Victoria, the completion of the Golden Plains Civic Centre, and the move to the new council chamber, and the accumulation of the rating review that was 4 years in the making to implement a fairer, more balanced rating system across the Shire. This year, we also have a near record year for securing government investment in Golden Plains. And we delivered 6 significant road projects, built 3 new bridges, and completed 7 major capital works. Looking through the annual report that we discussed earlier, there's a really exciting list of highlights and achievements that council ticked off this year. But this is not what has defined council this year, and will not be why I or any of us here will remember 2020. While all these highlights are indeed valuable for the Shire and our communities, this year was unlike any other year we have lived. This year has been defined by the COVID-19 pandemic in every aspect of our lives, and that's also true for council. The commitment and dedication of the council staff at all levels to keep serving the community throughout restrictions and significant changes to operations has been nothing but impressive. All council's essential services continued through the entire crisis, from maternal health appointments for newborn babies to personal home care for the elderly. Council staff met the new challenges and swiftly adapted to all the new pandemic controls to make sure we continued to care for the most vulnerable in the Golden Plains. On behalf of councillors and the community, I'd like to extend our appreciation to the CEO and all council staff for the flexibility and innovation. When we started this council term 4 years ago, and even when we started this year, we had no idea what lay ahead. And this year, as a council group, we met this unprecedented crisis with new initiatives to support our local residents and businesses. Most notably, council's financial hardship plan introduced significant rate reductions and put in place a new payment plans as targeted relief for our local ratepayers and businesses in financial hardship. While it may not have been what everyone expected, and we understand other councillors chose a smaller rate freeze, Australians have a long history of supporting their mates when they're down, of caring for their neighbour who may have lost their job or who genuinely need a helping hand to get back on track. Here in Golden Plains, we can be proud that we took a unique path that has much greater value and meaning for those that need it the most. It was a move that appropriately reflected council's Be Kind movement, encouraging the people of Golden Plains to care for themselves and their neighbours as we face these uncertain times. Of course, it wasn't just council who followed this path. So many individuals and groups embraced the idea in their own backyards and really grew the Be Kind into a movement. If I take one memory from this year as Mayor, it will be our local communities coming together to support each other during a very difficult and challenging time. There's too many wonderful stories to mention, but as a sample, the resilience of local businesses to keep serving their customers and the local residents who supported them to keep the doors open, who will be ready when they reopen to build their businesses back up. The sporting and community clubs who couldn't operate as usual, but who embraced new technology and old-fashioned channels to keep our communities connected. The schools in our Shire who made the leap to remote learning while caring for the education and welfare of every student and supporting local families to make sure that we got through this together. The new programs and initiatives that were developed by our creative and caring residents to make life better for those struggling, such as the many local primary school students who wrote heartwarming postcards with messages of hope to isolated and elderly residents across the Shire. All the local children who posted rainbows in their windows and teddy bears at their front door just to brighten the spirits of somebody walking or driving by. And the community groups who support the vulnerable in their villages and towns, such as the Linton Progress Association's food pantry and the Smyesdale IJ, who home delivered care packages. To every local person who picked up their groceries for a friend or checked up on a neighbour who lives alone or made a phone call to someone who was isolated. I know people say that it takes a village to raise a child, but it's the same village that cares for its residents and neighbours for their whole life. And we are fortunate in Golden Plains Shire to have 56 wonderful villages and townships full of people who did exactly that. I'm sure that many of our residents feel the same pride and gratitude I feel to live here and to be part of Golden Plains. And there was no time when the value of community was more evident than during this crisis. And again, on behalf of Council and our whole community, thank you to everyone who cared and made a difference when it mattered. Of course, we know that the COVID-19 pandemic isn't over yet. That in the years ahead, we will continue to support and lean on each other as we recover from this once in a lifetime event. There are sure to be more challenges ahead, but it is of great comfort that we live in a special corner of the world and we have a very bright future in the Golden Plains Shire. Certainly this past year has been unique and one we will all remember. Finally, tonight, I would like to again thank the councillors, CEO and council team, my family and friends and the people of the Golden Plains Shire for all the support over the past couple of years. It has been indeed been a great privilege and honour to serve as the Mayor of Golden Plains Shire and as a councillor over the past 4 years. Thank you kindly. Councillor Joanne Gilbert, would you like to say any words as a Deputy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to thank the people of the Golden Plains Shire for giving me the opportunity to represent them on council. I'd also like to thank all the staff, past and present, for your hard work and particularly the support that you have offered me during my tenure as a councillor. I owe a big thank you to my family for supporting my wish to serve the community on council, and I couldn't do this without their support, so thank you. Over the last few weeks and months, I've started to think about the last 4 years on council and reflected on some highlights and possibly even some lowlights. But being on council, I have learned, is a really difficult task. And so during this time as a councillor, we've made some difficult decisions, and I won't go through every decision, but 2 of them have stood out to me as being particularly time consuming and difficult. And that was the building of the Golden Plains Civic Centre and the tendering out of the Bannockburn Children's Service Centre. Both of those decisions affected a great many residents. And it was decisions that took many months, if not years, to come to. It's been very difficult when they have such financial impact on the Shire's budget. One of the things that I also believe that I'm most proud of being a part of is the COVID-19 hardship policy that we have recently adapted in our Shire. And I hope that that has offered some of our residents, probably small, but at least some support during this difficult time. I have thoroughly enjoyed my time as a councillor, meeting and assisting residents and being able to advocate for those who require assistance. I've particularly enjoyed going out on site to discuss with residents any planning issues, concerns, and just to see some of the really wonderful things that are happening in communities. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank my fellow councillors, especially the Mayor. You've been very supportive of me and I've thoroughly enjoyed being your deputy. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank our retiring councillors. It's been 4 years of vigorous debate with Councillor Evans, taking deep dives into each and every topic, and this has sparked some heated debate, which no one would debate, which has certainly increased my knowledge in many areas. Councillor Phelan, I thank you for your wealth of knowledge, your expertise, dedication and your longevity of service that you have provided to the residents of the Golden Plains Shire. Your knowledge of local government will be missed. Thank everybody for their contribution. It's a strange way to finish remotely like this, but we've done the best that we can. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gilbert. Thank you.
Now I've lost my photo.
You can hear you. Councillor Rowe, if you want to go ahead, or if you want to jump in, we can see you now.
Yep. Okay, I think I'm unmuted. Look, over the last 4 years, I've thoroughly enjoyed what has been achieved. Apart from the day-to-day running of the service delivery throughout the Shire, a lot of capital has been spent on community projects, road upgrades, bridges, etc., from the north to the south. I have also enjoyed working with fellow councillors, and it's good to have a diverse group represent the Shire. A lot of state and federal funding has been forthcoming through good lobbying by this current council. I wish the new incoming council well and hope we have left a good foundation for them to build on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Hansford or Councillor Hansford? Or Councillor Gilbert? Okay, Kirby. Councillor Hansford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hope you can hear me right. I know I've got some pretty bad connection right now. Keeps popping up on my screen, bad connection, but we'll press on.
All good, mate.
My last, sorry. We're good.
Sorry,
my last 4 years in council has been hopefully somebody can hear me.
You can hear you when you're talking, Councillor Hansford.
Righto, thank you. My last 4 years on council has been both rewarding and challenging at the same time. A couple of those very challenging things were securing a new CEO. Our outgoing CEO was the only CEO of the Golden Plains Shire, and they were big shoes to fill, and I believe that we've picked the right bloke for the job, and Eric has certainly stepped up to the plate, made a lot of changes, and really changed the direction of our Shire. Another one was building and keeping on budget the Civic Centre build. Although a not very popular project within our Shire, stage one is complete, under budget, and stage two is certainly looking to go the same way. Some of those rewarding things were the opening of the Bannockburn Heart stage one, the water park, as people know it as. This was definitely a highlight. Being elected to represent the region on the MAV board was another highlight. Many things in between of smaller significance, like township flood plans to tricky planning issues. The awarding of many grants for community infrastructure like roads, bridges, sporting facilities, upgrades as well. Something that all makes a term on council very worthwhile. I'd like to thank the administration, Eric and his staff. It's been a pleasure to represent the people of the Shire, and I thank you all very much for the opportunity to be part of the Golden Plains Shire from 2016 to 2020. Last but not least, thank my family, my wife Angela and our children. Without your support, I would not be able to do this. I wish those who are not standing again happy days in retirement, and those re-standing again best of luck. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hansford. Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Being your elected councillor has been a privilege and an honour. During the first year of this term, I declined being mayor due to the commitment I made to my father dying of prostate cancer. The look on his face when I told him that I declined due to my commitment to care for him was something that I'll never forget. Yet he never held me back on being committed to being a councillor. The second year of my term seen two of the most, the second year of my term seen two of the most major items on the agenda, the Bannockburn Plaza and the Invalid streetscape. Some people questioned me as why did I vote one way, then I changed my mind with the deciding casting vote as mayor. The answer was simple. Questions and answers needed to be fulfilled regarding the historical buildings surrounded the plans for the new shopping centre. Further consultation and feedback was needed to be explained to us all before we could be comfortable in passing the recommendation before us. This was a David and Goliath challenge, but as a council, we have to be open and honest and have respect for both parties, making sure all the boxes were ticked off before a final decision was made. During 2018, the Invalid community came together to challenge the streetscape plan. It was known as One Way, No Way, with many submissions made to the plan. The feedback was extensive regarding all issues within the town: drainage, historical issues, one-way streets, trees, and medium strips down the centre of the highway as a crosswalk. A 300-strong crowd showed up for consultation at a forum at the bowling club. 2019 was very disappointing when the Invalid streetscape plan was shelved. As a council, I feel that this was one of the worst decisions that was made. We heard the concerns of the residents and these should have been actioned with a new plan. I'm extremely disappointed as a councillor that this did happen. Hopefully, lessons have been learnt, that consultation needs to be done before the consultants put pen to paper. Some of the highlights have been the Ropewood Recreation Reserve back on the agenda. Meetings with the Chancellor of Ballarat regarding wind power and renewables being a course that our youth will be able to undertake and have employment on their home front. Election commitments from all politicians, example the Haddon Stadium. Linton lighting, Linton change rooms for netballers. A small football club at Lethbridge who used lighting for training. The Maud residents with the roads and quarry issues. This was a great win for their communities. The 2040 vision for the Shire is what being a councillor represents. Thank you to all the residents for their vision into the future. I'd like to thank the CEO, Mr. Eric Braslis, senior management and all the staff for your support. And lastly, good luck to all our new and old candidates in the upcoming election. But most of all, I'd like to thank all my family, friends and staff for their support in the last 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kirby. Can I have someone move that we recognise and acknowledge the Council, note the outgoing mayoral speech and the speeches of the councillors over the four-year term. Can move Councillor Rose, seconded Councillor Gilbert. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 7.15, recognition of
Sharkey. Point of order. Councillor Evans hasn't spoken yet.
No, he hasn't, Councillor Kirby. You are 100% correct. We're moving on to item 7.15, Councillor Kirby, where we're recognising the retiring councillors, of which are Councillor Phelan and Councillor Evans. So Councillor Evans will have that there. So
My apologies.
point of clarity. And so 7.15, and it is, I think, some really touching words there and things there. It is a very challenging time being on council, and we're not all here to always agree and always disagree. But both Councillor Phelan and Councillor Evans have given absolute 100% to the community over the past 4 and 40 years. Councillor Evans, if I may ask you to speak first when you're ready, and just on mute.
I'm still tidying up my speech. If I could let Councillor Phelan go first. He is older than me.
Yeah, and Councillor Evans, I just wanted to finish with Councillor Councillor Phelan, and just to acknowledge that, and there is something else coming up then, but I did want to finish with Councillor Phelan, having been 40 years there. I thought that I'd put you first as the junior, and Councillor Phelan, and appreciating that we've had a couple of weeks' notice.
Okay, here we go.
Take your time, Councillor Evans.
Early in my term, I met a previous councillor of Golden Plains Shire who said that his time on council was the greatest and he made lifelong friends. Sadly, I can say definitely that was not the case for me, rather the opposite. I had decided I would stand for council for only 4 years. And if I could not achieve my aims in that time, I was wasting my time. This council has been frustrating in a time it has taken me to get many issues addressed, usually no less than 2 to 4 years before appropriate changes are implemented. I appreciate the rapport I have had with our present directors and CEO. I would question them so that I could make the best decision that I could possibly make. And I appreciate their efforts in being able to answer them, if not straight away, within days. There is no doubt that the processes of local government are extremely slow, and decisions also take far too long. That is in total conflict with the dynamic private sector. My wife always says I have a passion to get things done and get them done quickly. So I've been very frustrated working as a councillor. I cannot see why this is so. It is the councillors that set the policy and the pace of change. I did not expect that to occur the way it has. I knew from the beginning that I needed to change, and I can say without fear that my efforts had saved this council millions of dollars, yet none of that has flowed through to rate relief, which was my key objective for being on council, an objective that I believe has to be maintained in the future. In meetings both on council and all other committees and pillars I have attended, I have been the most vocal voice in the room. Strangely, only 10 years ago, most people would consider me very shy. Preparation and understanding your topic are the key here. Leading the discussion gives you the opportunity to facilitate change, but only if you are not undermined by those who are protecting poor past decisions. Understanding why I was a councillor and respecting the residents' expectations of being their voice, even when it wasn't what I felt at the beginning, is sobering. There has been many times I've actually had to change my mind to reflect that in our community. And I think that is important because none of us are right all of the time, hopefully some of the time. Being at all briefings and engaging is paramount. Attending all delegated meetings and pillars is essential. Attending any forum that provides greater understanding is vital. All of these activities I have done to make me a better decision maker and a counsellor. I feel on the feedback I have received from the community, I have been successful here. I wish I have seen more of this in the council chamber, but except for Councillor Kirby, I have not. Councillors need to step up. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. Councillor Des Phelan, just before you start, Councillor Phelan, I just have an appreciating Councillor Phelan for all the years that you have been on council. We've formed many wonderful relationships right across the board, from a lot of state members and a lot of councillors and a lot of staff. We felt that it would be quite fitting to get a few words from somebody whom you spent many years with. And Director O'Sullivan, I think he's just putting that up. And when you're ready, Director O'Sullivan.
I just wanted to congratulate you on your outstanding contribution to the communities of Golden Plains Shire and one of its predecessor municipalities, the Shire of Bendigo, over the past 40 years. Since entering local government in 1979, you have witnessed significant change, some good, some not so good. During this time, you have been a councillor for 29 years and have been mayor on 8 occasions. I met you in the early 80s, and I've been fortunate to have worked with you in one capacity or another since then. In the mid-80s, you were co-chairman, along with your old mate Ron Little, of the Goldman Combined Group, and I was treasurer. This group took on the anti-amalgamation cause on behalf of many municipalities across Victoria against the Cone government and won the fight. The group's success had a lot to do with your commitment to the cause and your frank conversation. In addition, you have been a member of the CFA for approximately 54 years and held the position of group officer for 36 of those years, an outstanding commitment. As a result, you have been awarded a number of medals for your outstanding service. Not only have you been heavily involved in local government and the CFA, but you've also been heavily involved in many other community groups and activities. Throughout the time I've known you, Des, you have always been upfront and honest and have never been afraid of telling it how it was, which not always endeared you to everyone, but at least people knew where they stood with you. As the inaugural Mayor of Golden Plains Shire Council, following the amalgamation of councils, we worked closely together in a very difficult time. I had the privilege of being your CEO on 5 occasions whilst you were Mayor, during which we worked extremely hard, played hard, and had a lot of fun along the way, while achieving so much. Golden Plains Shire was very well respected within the local government sector and by governments of all persuasions and their bureaucrats. Congratulations, Des, on an amazing contribution to the community you have represented, and thanks for the memories. Cheers, old fella.
Thanks, George.
Thank you very much. Councillor Phelan, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, that's sort of stepped me back a bit, that speech from Rob, but I really appreciate it. I'd just like to say that my involvement in local government has been across a wide field that's associated with local government. I was the first elected to council in 1979, representing the East Riding of the Grenville Shire. I didn't think I'd ever be a councillor, but when I was elected or when I nominated, the people of the community here, they were the ones that got the nominations. You had to have 10 names on a nomination paper before you could put the nomination in. And they put up the 10 names and the $50. I went to the Grenville Shire, and I learned a lot from some really experienced councillors, and I learned how to get things done. In 1984, I was elected president, or now the mayor, and in that period, I'd served one term under a East Riding councillor. And in those days, you didn't get any money for being on the council. You did it for nothing. You did it to represent the people. When I was elected the mayor, it was the first year of the Cane government, as Rod's mentioned, restructure. I went on to become co-chairman of that group, and we took the government on. We were halfway through the fight when the next election came up, and I was elected mayor for a second term, the first one to be elected 2 years in a row in the Grenville Shire for over 100 years. In those days, when you were the mayor, you didn't get any more money. You got your $300 a year, and that was the way it was. In 1986, after the restructure, where we fought for 98 councils and 128 community groups and won, I was then elected to the MAV, General Management Committee, as a representative for the Southwest Region of Victoria councils. In that period of time, I also represented the Shire of Grenville on the Barrett Water Board for 2 years. And when it was amalgamated or taken over by the Central Highlands Water, I was then a government nominee on that board for 10 years. I also represented the council on the Barrett Development Board, the first Barrett Development Board put in there by the Labor government. And the achievement of that board has made Barrett a lot to do with the way Barrett is today. In 1994, we were dismissed as a council from the Shire of Grenville, and I had a little bit to do with the new Shire because I represented the commissioner on the at the MAV for those 2 years. In 1996, the new council was sworn in, and I was elected the mayor, and I was they were all single councillor wards then, 9 single councillor wards, and I represented the Break of Day riding. The first 12 months was very difficult. We had, we had 5, 6 ex-councillors, and we had 3 new people on the council. We went through that period, and it was very challenging, but a lot of help from the staff and the community. We got to the end of it. I was elected for a second term, and I served 2 terms. In 2002, I was defeated in the local government election, and I went off the council, and I thought I'd never be back. But a long-term councillor from the Golden Plains and the Grenville Shire, Kevin Knight, he retired in 2012, and he said, I think you should go back. And hence I returned. That was I've enjoyed this last 8 years on the council. It's been very good. It's been very challenging. And go back from when I first started in local government to what it is today, there was no social media. Everything that you did was carried by motion. And in those days, the council, when you moved a motion or seconded a motion or spoke to a motion for or against, you stood and spoke through the chair. It was very respectful, and I think it's something that we've lost over this past period of time. I think that the last 8 years have been challenging. As I said, I think social media, we now have people on the media all the time on social media, and they are trying to influence councillors' points of view or decisions. I think that we are elected people to represent the people, elected representatives of the people. We should be able to make decisions on evidence. I have no problem with consultation. It's a great thing. But at the end of the day, you've got to sit down and make a decision. And I think I've always been, the way I've worked is to make a decision, whether you win it or whether it wins out in the community or not, at least you've been able to make it. Also in my career, as Rod has mentioned, I was elected group officer and I served it for 36 years. In 1988, I was sworn in as a JP. and in 2001 I received an Australian Fire Service Medal. In 2016, when I retired from the Grenville Group as Group Officer, I received an Outstanding Service Award. My time in local government and in the public has been it's been great for me, and I've met so many people, Prime Ministers, Premiers, Governors, and the places it's taken me, I would never have been able to do it without the support of the council and the ratepayers. Finally, I'd like to thank my fellow councillors. I know that Councillor Evans and I have locked horns a lot, but I respected his point of view, but I didn't always agree with it. I probably never agreed with it, but I respected it. I wish all the sitting councillors all the best, the ones that are standing for re-election, and I don't know where this will end. But I'd like to acknowledge the people, the officers I've worked with. I think I had 4 or 5 Shire secretaries, or 5 Shire secretaries, and I had 5 engineers. And in those days, the council ran the whole thing. They employed the people, and they made the decisions. Today, it's so different, and it's taken me a while. It did when I first got elected mayor to get used to it. Finally, I'd like to thank my family. They've been so great to me. The time I spent away from home during the restructure period, they're always there. The kids looked after the sheep. They worked with Butch to help this survive. I couldn't have done it without them. And finally, I'd like to, the people that I've represented, and I know that I'm very straightforward and I tell people the way it is, I think they appreciate that because they knew when I took on their cause, I would fight for it. I've really enjoyed it. Tonight's a sad night for me, but it's been a wonderful experience and I've met so many wonderful people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Phelan, and it's very disappointing on a night like tonight that we all just close up our laptops and close down our iPads, and after 4 years working together, it's very disappointing that we can't, as councillors, acknowledge one another over the past 4 years. So I think, as everyone's been speaking there, I've been thinking to myself that definitely would enjoy a few moments after the meeting to pat one another on the back and speak for a little bit. But can I have someone move the council recognise and acknowledge those 2 retiring councillors, both Councillor Phelan and Councillor Evans? Move Councillor Gilbert, seconded Councillor Rowe. All those in favour? The motion is carried. We have no notices of motion, no petitions or no urgent business. We do have a confidential report for decision, which we'll move into now. And for those that have are viewing from home, and for those that are present in the room, I'll just finish on this, that as we conclude the final council meeting of the 2016-2020 council term, I'd like to again thank the CEO and the organisation for their hard work over the past 4 years. And I think it is fully appreciating and making a special note of the CEO, Mr. Eric Braslis, who has, for the past number of months, and many people will probably be unaware that we have the CEO of this organisation in stage 4 restrictions, and has been working this whole organisation from his dining room table. And it's quite hard for us in regional Victoria to comprehend what people such as the CEO are going through, being locked down, not being able to interact with staff. I know the CEO is someone who very much enjoys the collaboration and seeing staff members and having conversations with them. It's hard to believe that he now gets excited about going off to Aldi for 50 minutes. So that's quite unbelievable that a CEO can run this whole organisation from a dining room table. And as I said earlier, we have not missed a beat. So thank you very much, Eric. And also I'd like to thank the Golden Plains Shire community who supported our council throughout this term. On behalf of council and the community, we again extend our appreciation and best wishes to both Councillor Evans and Councillor Phelan for their service and representation over many years. We remind all Golden Plains Shire residents that the council elections will be held by the Victorian Electoral Commission next month. Best wishes to all those councillor candidates who are standing for office in this election. All eligible voters will be mailed a ballot pack from the 6th of October, and the postal vote closes on the 23rd of October 2020. The results of the election and the Golden Plains Shire councillors for the 2020-2024 term will be declared by the 13th of November. A council meeting for the mayoral election will be held on the 17th of November, and the first monthly council meeting of the 2020-2024 term will be held on the 24th of November. Thank you again to everyone who's watched tonight's council meeting at home and via YouTube. Good night, and thank you very much.